The first place to start with minor scales is just to relate them to major scales. For every major scale, and we can use C major as an example, there is a minor scale that uses exactly the same set of notes. So I just played A minor. It uses exactly the same notes as a C major scale, and that's easy to tell in this situation because we're just using all the white keys. So what makes it a minor scale is that I'm going to start on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth note of that scale, use the same set of keys, and now I have a minor scale. This works for every major scale. Let's use A flat major. I'm going to use that same palette of notes, but start and end on the sixth note of the scale. I get F minor. We call these relative major and minor scales. They use the same set of notes. And a shortcut to get from a major key to its relative minor is just to walk down 1, 2, 3 half steps. This is one of the many reasons learning your major scales is so great. You kind of get the minor scales for free. Another way we can relate major and minor scales are to look at the major scale and minor scale that start and end on the same note. So we call these parallel major and minor. This concept is useful because it lets you see which notes changed when we went from a major scale to a minor scale. And actually between this A major scale and A minor scale, most of the notes are the same. We just lowered the third note of the scale, the sixth, and the seventh. This leads us well into talking about different types of minor scales. So far, we've just been using the natural minor scale. That's the scale that shares all of its notes with its relative major. But there's also a melodic minor scale and a harmonic minor scale. And the only differences between these three scales are on the 6th and 7th scale degrees. For melodic minor, you raise them both. For harmonic minor, you just raise the 7th. To remember these names, it helps to think about what they mean. Melodic minor is useful for melodies. Raising both the 6th and the 7th leads us really strongly up into the root. And in fact, in melodic minor, we're supposed to lower the 6th and the 7th when we're coming down melodically. Again, because it leads more strongly down into the 5th. So melodic minor is good for melodies. Harmonic minor is good for harmony. And specifically, there's one chord progression it really helps. That's the 5-to-1 chord progression. So this 5-to-1 resolution in natural minor sounds kind of neutral. We're playing the chord built on the 5th degree of the natural minor scale and resolving to the chord built on the root of the natural minor scale. A stronger chord progression would be a major 5 chord resolving to the 1 chord. Because that 5-to-1 chord progression is so important, composers often prefer that stronger version with the major 5 chord. And in order to do that, we've raised the 7th note of this A minor scale. So to review, relative major and minor are two scales that share all the same notes. Parallel major and minor are the major and minor scales that start and end on the same notes. And to turn that most basic natural minor scale into harmonic minor, you raise the 7th. For melodic minor, you raise the 6th and 7th on the way up, lower them on the way back down. What about minor scale fingerings? You could play all your minor scales with exactly the same fingerings as your major scales. You'll just be starting on a different finger. So I could play my A minor scale starting on finger 3, and I'll end up with all the same fingers on the same notes as when I play a C major scale. But it is useful to practice your minor scales starting on finger 1 in the right hand or finger 5 in the left hand. Just keep in mind the most important rule of good fingering on the piano. You want to keep your thumb on white keys whenever you're playing a passage that mixes white and black keys. And how about practice? Should you spend as much time practicing your minor scales as your major scales? If you just want to develop your technique, then minor scales are equally useful as major scales. But a lot of songwriters, producers, composers care more about learning to recognize the shapes of these scales and find them easily on the piano keyboard. And for that, I don't actually recommend that you spend most of your time doing this kind of up and down scale practice. I recommend you spend a lot of time transposing simple melodies. If you like a lot of pieces of music that are written in minor keys, you're going to get more practice transposing through the minor keys than through the major keys. If you're curious for more of a deep dive on that philosophy of scale practice, I have a video on major scales that I'll link to. I'm Ted with Piano Fluency. Thanks for joining me.